You're listening to Inside Israel Today with Gil Hoffman on the Land of Israel Network.
Hello and welcome to Inside Israel Today here on the Land of Israel Network on thelandofisrael.com, where we are only 48 days away from our third election of God knows how many coming up. And this is the time where we find out who the parties running are really going to be. The deadline for running for Knesset, ladies and gentlemen, is tomorrow night at 10 p.m. You still have time. Come here. Join a party. I guess you actually had to take some forms before, but if you make it, you can still be a part of our exciting election. Now, as the election intensifies, you will see many talking heads on the different radio networks and TV networks, and among the talking heads that tend to fight each other, we have Uri Zaki from Meretz / Democratic Union / now Labor / Meretz / Gesher, and we have Jeremy Saltan from the New Right. Now, they debate each other on TV and radio pretty often, but they have been gradually changing hats, ladies and gentlemen, because this is the time when parties have to decide if they're running together or not. And over the last 24 hours, we've had a lot of excitement. We found out that the left has decided to run together. Meretz and Labor, two historic parties deciding that they should join forces for the election, while the right has been dividing, fighting, and bickering. Which is the smartest strategy ahead of this election? That's why I'm glad that we have both Jeremy and Uri here on the line, here together on Inside Israel Today on the Land of Israel Network. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning, Gil.
Good morning, so let's start with the candidate, the party who's probably in the better mood right now with what's going on. Let's start with you, Uri. Mazel tov on getting the left to unite. How did it happen, and why did it happen?
First of all, thank you. It happened, I believe, because there was, although a late but not too late understanding within the Labor Party that this union is something that has to be done, both for electoral reasons, meaning, as you explained, to secure that no vote would be lost, and you know, when in the polls both Meretz and Labor were each around 4 or 5 seats, we're talking about a threshold of 4 seats. It was a danger, and second, that it is a natural union. You know, Labor used to be the ruling party of the non-left, the non-right. I'm sorry, the alternative to the Likud party. That's its traditional position. Nonetheless, since Blue and White emerged as the alternative to Netanyahu as a ruling party, the Labor kind of lost its raison d'être, but remained a left-wing party. The differences between Meretz and Labor, although they exist, are not such differences that can explain why you should need to have 2 parties in an era that, because of the threshold and other reasons, you see bigger and bigger parties. You know, if a few Knessets ago we used to have 12 parties, now we're talking about 9 parties, and I think there might be even less parties in the next Knesset. So it's a natural union. I should say that for me, it's not only because of the electoral calculations. Even when I was the chair of Young Meretz back in 2006, when Labor had 19 seats and Meretz had 5 seats, I tried to I preached together with Ran Hermoni, who is now the Secretary General of the Labor Party and was then the chair of Young Meretz. We worked on merging the two of Labor, the 2 factions together. I'm how would I call it? A student of Dr. Yossi Beilin, whom I used to work with for many years. Dr. Yossi Beilin, who was one of the leaders of the Labor Party and then became the chair of Meretz, preached for unification between those two parties back in the 90s when the Labor was over 30 and Meretz was 10 seats. So I believe this union is a foundation for a new, strong left party. It's not only because of the threat, but also, and mainly for me, because of the hope.
So the left succeeded in uniting, and the right did not. The right seems to be splintering. Yesterday, the new right of Naftali Bennett and Ayelet Shaked that Jeremy Saltan is affiliated with decided to splinter off and take a very big risk to run on its own. The other parties on the right want to run together, but they're still fighting right now as we speak, as we are taping this show. Jeremy, why were you not as successful as Uri's friends? And aren't you making a big mistake here?
No, I don't think it's a mistake at all. I actually think the mistake is what we see right now on the left side. The last time that Uri and I went off and faced each other, it was on I-24 News, and Uri Zaki said, and I have it taped, that he said that there should not be a union between Labor and Meretz. He actually called it unnatural, and he said that Meretz should be looking towards an Arab-Israeli partnership, considering Faraj has been thrown down to number 11.
I never said something like that. I agree with you that an Arab component, since the last elections, I'm preaching for a union between Labor and Meretz strongly. So I would really want to see that tape.
I'm very happy to send it to you.
And maybe you're right, but don't take.
No, it's possible you said other things before that. That's fine. That does happen with politicians from time to time. It's on my YouTube channel, so also other people can go on and can listen. That's fine. But I'm saying that Faraj at number 11 is not a serious. Faraj at number 11 is not a serious partnership with Jews and Arabs if the top 10 is all Jews. I'm sure you'll agree with me at least on that.
Concerned about the how Meretz's list is composed. Again, I might even have arguments for going separately for you guys, but don't base this on disinformation. I never said that I'm against joining forces with Labor. I've been working for this since the early 2000s, personally. So
again, I remember that interview. The two of us were sitting at the same table.
Jeremy, you can move on and explain why it could be a good thing for the right to stay separate.
Because Uri gave me the same advice, which is why I mentioned that in response to your question, Gil. He said that a lot of times two pieces, when they're together, do not actually reach the sum of their parts. Now, I can tell you that the difference between Meretz and Labor is obviously a lot smaller than the difference between Hayamina Chadash and the Otzma party, which is led by Kahanists. I think even Uri would concede that point to me. The thought process that we could run on the same ticket is pretty far-fetched. This is something that, by the way, both Otzma does not want, as well as the fact that we do not want that to happen. There's a question of exactly who should run with who in terms of the right-wing bloc, in terms of the other parties that are not Likud or part of the Haredi parties. But I do not think it's a mistake. I can tell you from speaking to my constituents, from all of the WhatsApp groups I'm in, from a lot of conversations that I've had with people, they've said straight up, if we run on the same ticket with Ben Gvir, they will not vote for us. So I really think that similar to the situation which really led to the Meretz Labor merger, in which neither side wanted to commit political suicide, I think it would actually be political suicide for the right-wing bloc, which is something that all of the parties in the right care about, for us to go ahead and not just repeat the failure of Yamina, which we tried in the second round, but then go ahead and add Otzma, which would chase away even more voters towards Blue and White and Lieberman. I know that a lot of people want to look between the second and third election, but I look between the first and third election. And there's a very big difference there, Gil. Zehut is no longer running. Kulanu is no longer running. Gesher, which was once considered center or within the right-wing bloc, is now running on the same ticket as Meretz. A lot of the joke parties like Gal Hirsch are no longer running. If we miss the threshold running alone when Naftali Bennett was not defense minister by 1,400 votes, there's now a pool of 350,000 votes of parties that ran in the first round that do not exist. I'm not worried about us.
Okay, so it's important that you bring up Avigdor Lieberman, because he's the one that actually caused this whole mess by raising the threshold in order to try to keep out Arab parties. 5 years ago now, and that ended up resulting in the Arab parties uniting and running together as one party that is now unquestionably the third largest party in Israel today, and resulted with this now being 3.25% of the vote, about 150,000 votes, the left and the right needing to form these partnerships, these technical blocks in order to run. And so my question to you, Uri, there are two people who were pushing for the parties, their satellite parties, to run together, and that is Gantz on the center left and Netanyahu on the center right. And the reason why they did that is because they want to feel free to eat you alive, and if you were on the threshold, then he couldn't do that because it would cause him to lose mandates that would be on his side after the election. Are you not afraid that now that Meretz and Lieber are running together, that two parties that would have gotten 5-6 seats on their own will end up getting 5-6 seats together?
Two parties, in fact, want the satellite parties to unite in order for them to be far enough from the threshold in order for the big parties to then munch on them. Having said that, I believe that it's also up to us. I mean, if such a union would transmit, power and ideological motivations, and would transmit hope and to our voters through statements that are not only yes Bibi, no Bibi, but rather some more. We have a lot to say about the Israeli-Palestinian issues, social issues, civil issues in Israel. That I think that the combination of a stronger party, one party that unites all the scattered parts of the Israeli left together with one list and one message, I think it has a potential to refrain from being eaten by blue and white. By the way, I should mention that Jeremy definitely has a lot. What he says makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you know for a fact that two smaller satellite parties would cross the threshold, then together they most likely they'll get more than with one united party. Unions in politics don't necessarily bring more seats than running separately. But the danger in the right is that one of those two parties would not cross the threshold. I really salute, and if Jeremy and more importantly Bennett would continue seeing the Kahanists as a non-starter for any union, I salute them. I mean, the fact that they're willing to risk the right-wing bloc in order to refrain from having Kahanists, racists, as part of this bloc is something I can really admire. Unfortunately, Netanyahu doesn't share that perspective. He did a lot in order for the Kahanists to be part of the bloc that he so praises. But this is a stand that if they'll maintain, I really think they should be saluted for.
Hey, well, Uri, you have an advantage because your party, its candidate for prime minister is Benny Gantz, who's acknowledged across the political spectrum as being a nice person. Benny Gantz is nicer than Netanyahu. Netanyahu, he is a shrewd politician. He knows how to get the maximum number of votes possible. And the two people who he apparently hates the most in this world are Naftali Bennett and Ayelet Shaked. And now he has them in his sights. If they are running alone, without any other party, whether it be the Kahanists or more normative religious Zionists. This, after they didn't cross the threshold in April, if they lose twice, they're gone. Their political careers could be over. Netanyahu could get the result of his dreams, and even if he doesn't form the next government, at least he could have something to smile about if he ends the political career of Naftali and Ayelet. Jeremy, very, very scary, no?
I'm not scared at all. Again, I'll remind you that Naftali Bennett is the defense minister that was chosen by Benjamin Netanyahu. But beyond that point, we're the only party on the right wing that is running in this election that is not Haredi, affiliated with the Kahanists, or part of the Likud party. That's not something that could be said in the previous rounds. This is a very, very different ballgame. What you see right now is really a consolidation of the parties running for Knesset. A lot of the parties, as I mentioned in my previous answer, that were around in the first round are no longer there. We just don't really have competitors. But more importantly, we are the only ones that can go ahead and get voters from Lieberman and blue and white. The only chance that Netanyahu has to remain prime minister is for us to be able to bring more voters to the right-wing bloc and get to 61. If the prime minister decides that he does want, for whatever reason, to go back on whatever it is that he has said in the past, that he understands the bloc and he's not going to try to cannibalize it anymore, and decides to do it anyways, it will be a situation where he is committing his own political suicide. And, as we see with the merger on the left, people understand that making, the move of political suicide is something that is not wanted, and people do every effort to avoid it. To suggest that what we're doing is a dangerous thing or something that could possibly end either Bennett or Shaket's careers, to me, again, is just crazy. We are doing fine. We are getting a lot of support. So many people are talking to me. They're so happy for our courageous step that we're running alone. And again, this is Netanyahu's best shot to get to 61.
Now, when we talk about suicide, it's one thing to kill yourself on your own. It's another thing to kill yourself and bring down your enemies with you. The suicide bombers did that. And if anything, that's what Netanyahu would be doing. Now, yesterday at the Knesset, I was there for the meetings of the Knesset Arrangements Committee, deciding to advance the immunity process for Netanyahu, for rejecting Netanyahu's attempt to get immunity from prosecution in his criminal cases. And it was interesting for me to see the politicians there from Labor and from Meretz who were happy about their steps that could eventually lead to the end of Netanyahu's political career. But they seem to be, even, I love the voice of the baby in the background. I don't think we should change that in any way. And I know that Uri has a baby coming up on the way too. And
mine is about a month due. So.
Okay, so keep Ben, the editor, we're not taking out the baby. For me, it was interesting to see the joy of perhaps eventually getting rid of Netanyahu did not compare to the joy I saw from talking to politicians on the left about getting rid of Stav Shaffir. They talked with such relish and joy about Stav's political career possibly being over, and how many enemies that she made along the way, how she got so many people upset at her. And this is someone who was seen not too long ago as the future leader of the left. So, Uri, will you admit on a radio broadcast that you're happy to see her go?
Stav Shaffir is one of the most known members of Knesset in the Israeli left. She's known for fighting for the left. I believe, but there are also many important leaders and members of Knesset on the left. The Democratic Union, with which we ran together as Meretz in the last round, didn't prove to be a union that made Meretz bigger. Meretz in April had 4 seats. Then in then in September lost 2 seats to Stav Shaffir and Yair Golan. And therefore Meretz wanted to have a bigger component of Meretz in joining together with Stav Shaffir. She was proposed to be number 5 on the list, which, by the way, by Nitzan Horowitz, which, by the way, would have pushed Isawi Fred further away, and I'm glad that she, in a sense, didn't accept this. But it was a very generous offer. We have 5 seats right now on the list. There's no reason why, why Stav Shaffir is more important than the members of Knesset of Meretz, who each one of them is very prominent, doing a lot of important work, both vis-a-vis the Israeli public and in the parliament. Some very key members of Knesset and sometimes don't end up being in the Knesset when you have new elections. I believe that Stav Shaffir, in a sense, has to take responsibility for how she got to this place. I definitely don't see it as I don't see any tensions there or anything like that. I think in politics, it's important to know how to make your moves, and it's very important to create alliances. And I think, again, maybe as a political analyst, I think in that front, she throughout her career, she wasn't very good in creating alliances. And alliances are part of politics, are a basic part of politics. And you just can't. Being a maverick doesn't work in politics.
That has definitely been proven by what's gone on with her and her political adventure. I guess my last question, and then I'll let you go, Uri, is you have a very big day today. You've got the Meretz Convention, which will be deciding, first of all, whether to approve the deal with labor, which is expected to pass by a wide margin, but then we'll also have another vote on approving the deal with Yair Golan, who's a former deputy chief of staff of the IDF and has been given the 3rd slot on the labor list, the 3rd slot on the Meretz list, which in the combined list with labor would end up being the 7th slot on the list. Ilan Gilon is number 8 on the list. Right now, number 11 is Isawi Frej, the representative of the Arab community. If Meretz decides at its convention tonight to get rid of Yair Golan, then Isawi Frej would be number 8, which would be in the top 10, make a statement about the commitment of Meretz and this greater union to the Jewish-Arab partnership. How are you going to vote?
It's a huge dilemma. I wasn't that enthusiastic about the original Democratic Union, unlike this union. I think the union with labor is of huge importance. And it's but having said that, the chair of the party signed the agreement with Yair Golan. We are very, very happy that Yair Golan is joining Meretz. Yair Golan, a former deputy chief of staff. It's a great advantage for a party like Meretz and this new union to have someone in his capacity joining the list, and giving a degree of legitimacy to our positions. When you have a general saying portraying the ideology of Meretz, it gives it more it gives an advantage of credibility for someone who very recently was released from a very long service. Having said that, Arab-Jewish partnership is one of the cornerstones of Meretz. Definitely in the past year, where in April, when we went alone with no big stars from the outside, under the leadership of Tamar Zandberg, with Isawi Frej leading the campaign in the Arab society, we received some 40,000 seats. But it's not only electoral. Even if like in the last round, we received some 15,000. We lost about 25,000 Arab votes. It is a very important component in our ideology. I must admit I'm torn. I'm torn because I wish we could have had a situation where, in any case, Isawi would have been at least part of the first 10, as you mentioned. It's a big dilemma, and I think it's going to be a huge dilemma to all the members of the Meretz convention today on how to elect. It's a very, very big political dilemma.
Well, good luck with that. Uri, thank you for coming here on Inside Israel today on the Land of Israel Network on thelandofisrael.com.
Sure. Thank you.
And now back to Jeremy Saltan for the last question of the show. So as we're speaking here right now, there has been a clash between Bezalel Smotrich and Rabbi Rafi Peretz overnight in the effort to unite the parties, I guess, to the right of the new right. How do you think this is going to be resolved, or will there end up being 4 parties running separate from the Likud on the right?
I don't think there's going to be 4, and then there will be 2. The question really is what's going to happen with Smotrich. I feel bad for Smotrich. I'm looking at the fact that he made a deal, and from what it seems, at least based on what he said, and Bayit Yehudi has not refuted this, that they did not live up to their side of the deal. What bothers me the most is a person that, I was for several years, I was a central committee member of the Bayit Yehudi. I'm watching my friends from both sides, both people that supported the merger and those who opposed the merger, that they were voting on with Tkuma and with Otzma, and they were getting into a physical altercation. And I'm watching people who I know, who I've gone to Shabbos dinners with, I've had, nice long walks in the park with, and watching that on the TV screen happening in my old party, the thing that just comes to my head is that's just really not my home anymore. And that goes back to the first question that you asked me, which was that I do not think it was a mistake to not run on a single list. I think the differences between us and Bayit Yehudi are tremendous. And just watching what my old friends were doing to each other last night is just another illustration of that.
Jeremy, thank you for coming here on Inside Israel today on the Land of Israel Network, on thelandofisrael.com. And listeners, we've had an exciting show here today where you've gotten the right and the left, you've gotten the uniters and the splitters, different political strategies. You can decide for yourself. That's the way it is here on Inside Israel today. And have a wonderful day from here in Jerusalem. Bye-bye.
Hi, this is Josh Haston, host of Israel Uncensored here on the Land of Israel Network. Tune in every Monday to hear the latest news coming from Israel, plus interviews with top Israeli politicians, media personalities, and activists, all doing their part to counter anti-Israel propaganda and BDS. Don't miss a minute. Be sure to stream or download all of the amazing programming from our wide range of hosts here at the Land of Israel Network on thelandofisrael.com.